welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and I am on Twitter at Bob McDonald. And with me, my co-host, my faithful co-host, Jimmy Lemke.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm good here for another week.
Another week. And Jimmy is at Panther U on Twitter. And you can always follow the podcast on Twitter as well at HoriZone RT. Today, Jimmy, we've got a gaggle of guests again.
Yep, just a veritable gaggle.
Veritable rogues gallery, if you will. So today we've got Matthew Johns and Sean McDonnell. They are from the Reserve News, and these guys basically, and I'm not even, I want to not have this as a hyperbole, but it just seems like it's fact at this point in time. These are the guys who are basically own Cleveland State coverage right now. So thanks for coming on, Matt and Sean.
Yeah, man, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure and looking to have some fun.
All right. And also joining us again is the founder of the Catch and Shoot, which focuses primarily on Chicago college hoops, Chicago basketball, Jesse Kramer.
Hey, nice to be back.
Yeah, thanks for being on. So, my primary I wanted to start off basically by talking a little bit about kind of, and I know Jesse, when you were last on, we didn't really talk a lot about kind of the origins of your respective sites. So, Sean, Matt, I've been very interested in kind of the how the Reserve has kind of built itself up since the first podcast back last year. So, kind of walk us a little bit through kind of the origins of how the Reserve News is kind of started and kind of go from there.
So, Matt, do you want me to do this, or do you want to do it? Or
I got this.
Okay.
So basically,
good.
This all the idea of the Reserve started would have been after the spring 2017 semester. There was a group of editors for one of the student publications at Cleveland State who had some different views on different things within the publication. And basically, we all decided that we were going to go a different direction. So the four of us wanted to create something that would give us a little bit more freedom in what we publish, and more importantly, freedom in timeliness of publishing things, so that we could cover things that were, not necessarily just fluffy, soft pieces that would get thrown out in a couple of weeks and still be able to matter. We wanted to cover things that could be a little more meaningful and get out there right away, right after the thing happened. So we decided to start the Reserve and kind of focus on smaller events, arts, sports, stuff like that around Cleveland. And we've been undergoing some pretty significant changes over the past maybe 2 or 3 months, to where Sean and I have been trying to kind of redirect the website and really focus in on more of just arts and sports, and cutting out all of the extra stuff that wasn't really doing well. Okay. So, Sean, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about freedom to write what you need to do, and it's all about being able to try new things. Being independent has allowed us to do things like podcasts and beat writing and things that you can't really do when you publish every 2 weeks, and things that you can't really do if you're going to, write for somebody else. And it also gives us a lot of freedom to say, okay, let's try like minor league baseball. Let's go try and cover minor league baseball. Let's see if the numbers are there. Let's see if we can, put a flair on this. And, it's really, you get to go toe to toe with, some of the bigger publications that Bob is outspoken about on Twitter.
Who, me?
Yeah, I'm not going to name any names. I'm sure you will. But they're, and you got to look for where the hole is. So everybody covers the NBA. There really wasn't any great Cleveland State coverage. Cleveland.com didn't cover it a lot. Neo Sports Insiders would a lot of the times copy just the game reports that the PR guy would send out. So, you see the hole and you fill it.
And then there was me who only wrote once a week and usually was snarky as hell.
Now, the question I have: are you having trouble getting access?
Surprisingly, no.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
There have been a couple of things here and there that we've tried that haven't really worked out, but we've been doing some coverage with the captains, and they were very cool with it.
Captains is Cleveland, the Indians minor league team out in the eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've been exchanging emails with the Rubber Ducks down in Akron. We're going to look to get down there. Greg Murphy over with Cleveland State and his crew in the information department of the athletics has been phenomenal in doing pretty much anything that we've requested and helping.
I will say this: Greg Murphy is an excellent SID.
CSU SID on Twitter. And by the way, I absolutely agree, Jimmy. For as many years as Greg had to put up with me, the guy's a saint.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connor will have war stories to share that'll be similar to Greg's for you.
And Spencer helping us out with lacrosse this year, and Renee with women's basketball. They've been absolute saints over there and have really been allowing us to produce the content we've wanted to. So, and then even on the arts side, we've got Gwen has connections over at Playhouse Square that she's able to get in and do theater stuff over there, and we've been contacting Beachland Ballroom, and everybody's really been phenomenal for us.
And I would want to say all of the coaches at Cleveland State, especially when we did the Viking invasion, have been very helpful, taking time out of their day to do interviews. Even to tell a story about KPA, since she's retiring now, she actually did the same interview twice because there was a malfunction with some microphones and some stuff didn't get recorded. So, she was nice enough to take time out of her day a second time to do an interview. So, all of them, they've really enjoyed having the coverage, and they've been very helpful.
So, and on your end, Jesse, I know not you with the catch and shoot, you cover not just UIC, but a lot of the other Chicago area schools. What was kind of the start for you on that front? I understand now, coming from where you were as a journalism student.
Yeah, so it actually started when I was in New York in high school. It was just sort of like a passion project when I had some more time after I submitted all my college applications senior year. So I just started covering some of the local schools, mainly mid-majors in the New York area, like Manhattan College, Iona, Fordham, Columbia, a little bit of LIU, Brooklyn, those teams. And then I guess it was a few months after that. It started in January, and then I guess in April or May, I found out that I was going to go to Northwestern for college and study journalism. And I guess when I got to Chicago, I was kind of surprised not only by the lack of big media coverage from the big papers for local college basketball, but also there weren't that many blogs, even like things that were similar to what I was doing. Whereas in New York, you had not great coverage all the time from the big newspapers, but still some. And then you also had a ton of blogs. It seemed, there were like 3 or 4 different blogs that were like really dedicated to covering basically all the schools in the local area. And they didn't really have that in Chicago. So I saw it as a good opportunity to just in my spare time as a college student, really see what type of market there was for it.
You saw a hole and you filled it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it gave me a lot of, freedom to just sort of kind of like what Sean was just saying, just like the freedom as an independent site to just do really whatever you want and just see what sticks. You could focus on game coverage. You could focus more on features. You could see just what brings in the numbers, what brings in the engagement, and see what people like. And yeah, so for me, I kind of knew from the start I really wanted to cover Loyola and UIC just because I'd always been a big mid-major person. I grew up as a Manhattan College fan here, and I always loved that mid-major atmosphere, being in a tiny gym where you're right up close to everything. And they were actually really good with giving me access right away. I remember UIC, they were the first local school in Chicago to give me access, and they kind of just let me go for it from the start. They gave me a full credential and, let me come to practice whenever I asked, basically. And then I think with Loyola, once they saw that like UIC was letting me do my thing and that I was serious about what I was doing and, doing as much as I could to be a respectful journalist, even though I was really young at the time, they kind of saw that, and then they let me get some access. And then after a year of doing that, my first year was just Loyola and UIC, I think. And then after that, I was able to get access with Northwestern and DePaul to kind of, complete everything and have the full picture of Chicago hoops. And it really started to grow. I guess it was the first 2 years were a little bit slower, and then it really grew my junior year, which would have been the 15-16 season. And then, it kept growing a lot during the 16-17 season too.
All right.
Now, and I know we talked a little bit about this before we started recording. All three of you started this, started in relation to these sites. I mean, you with the catch and shoot starting in high school, and then kind of migrating that into Chicagoland, into that realm. And Sean, you and Matt, obviously, you started the Reserve based upon, starting to write about things that not necessarily everybody's writing about, and it's interesting. My question to you guys is, with regards to the sustainability, what is the future hold for these two sites? I mean, Jesse, I know we talked a little bit about. I know you are, I understand, back in New York again, and so where does the future lie for these two sites?
Yeah, so for me with the catch and shoot, I don't write that much anymore on the website just because I'm not around the programs every day, so. I just don't have the same opportunities in terms of just my time and my access to really tell the stories of those Chicago schools. But that being said, I still, have kept up with them basically as closely as I always have during this past season, and still did a little bit of writing when I had the time and opportunities to. I did a couple of features on Loyola and UIC, and but I've still been using like my Twitter account to just sort of stay involved in that Chicago basketball community and still be a voice in that community on Twitter. And when I do, I barely wrote on the actual catch and shoot website, but I was writing for College Insider a bit, and I hope to do that again next year because they're a pretty cool mid-major publication, and sort of like promoting all of it through the catch and shoot and funneling it through there.
I guess for us at the Reserve, as far as the immediate future goes, the content that we're producing is ever evolving, and Sean and I are constantly bouncing ideas off of each other and just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. And as far as the long-term future, it honestly isn't as reckless as it sounds. It's really just kind of taking it day by day, because Sean and I are both going to be, Sean graduates in a semester, I graduate in a year. And, obviously we need to think about our own well-being and full-time jobs and supporting ourselves. So, I mean, I think both of us would love to see the Reserve, thrive and continue to grow, and at the very least be something that we can do on the side of, a professional gig. But it's so hard just with all the moving parts to really predict what the long-term future of the website is.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing right now and what we've been working on is recruitment, because the more writers you can add, not only to like your think tank, but just to your site in general, helps all of the other content, because you're going to have people coming to see one writer and they'll see the others, and it kind of keeps it going. So it's all riding on that. We'd like to reach into some other types of coverage, some high school coverage, some more arts and music stuff around town. So, I mean, it's really all, giving that opportunity that we've had to write and become better writers to other people.
Finding people is, yeah.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Go ahead. Well, what I was going to say is, I'm thinking back to the time when I was a sports editor at the UWM Post, the school paper over there, before it got kiboshed. And we had... when I was a sports editor, we had as much. When I started, it was just me and another guy, and eventually I grew it up to 15 people. And the problem that I found was it wasn't just finding people, but it was finding reliable people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would be very good, and some people would just you'd be be quite flaky. And it was difficult finding people that were really reliable. So you have to find somebody that's got the passion, but when you do, and you can keep them interested and keep them writing, you can really do some really special stuff, which we were really able to do at the Post for. Years opened, we would run 15 articles in 1 week. That would be in one print edition of the newspaper that really fleshed out everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were able to cover all of the small sports, and that's what's so nice about that is that they really appreciate it. They really appreciate it when you can get people out to tell their story. And as long as you can get people that are reliable for it, then all the better. But it can be real difficult finding those people.
Yeah, well, at the end of our Cauldron days, the sports section was almost like the me, Matt, and Kevin show. It's tough. It's tough to find people. You'd imagine with all the journalists around campus that you'd be able to find people really easily, but a lot of people, for some reason, have this in their mind where they want to go straight from not writing to writing about pro sports, and they start like Cavs blogs, and they're throwing their Cavalier or Browns opinion up against 1,000 other Browns opinions, and they're not going.
I'd like to say that has changed in the last 20 years. It has not. Cleveland State is such a weird place when it comes to the writing, because as you said, the default response is, "Hey, I want to cover I want to write about the pro teams," but they seem to forget that small part where, oh yeah, I actually have to write about something else first.
Well, the other problem with that is that with the pro teams, and Cleveland, like Milwaukee, like Chicago, like New York, these are pro sports towns.
Yep.
First and foremost, so people want to gravitate towards the pro sports, and I would get people that would come in and be like, I've got this, and I'm like, well, but you want to write an opinion about the Packers? We're 2 hours away. I can't get you credentials to Packer games. What's the point? And they'll talk, they'll say some bullshit about, well, I've got a different take and a different opinion that people are going to be interested in.
No, you don't, dude.
No, you really don't. And even 10 years ago, there were 55 different blogs.
Yeah.
About the Green Bay Packers, but everybody wants to talk about the Packers because religion here. And it's like, yeah, but do you really want to be a journalist? Because if you want to be a journalist, every big time editorial writer that you know, and back then, it was the all the guys that were on Around the Horn and Kornheiser and Wilbon and all, like the big national writers, like those guys started out as stringers and then beat writers covering teams on a daily basis, covering Poughkeepsie High School. You have to be able to cover the small stuff and work your way up to that. Like, you don't just automatically flick a switch and then there you go. And people just don't get it.
What's hilarious to me is we've compared our view numbers on Cleveland State articles to some other sites, like we called them, hey, how does your content do on this and that? And like their Cleveland State stuff might get like 200 views tops, and that's maybe where ours tops out too. And then their high school stuff will get 800 in the first hour. And you try and tell people that when like you're talking to new writers, maybe at an SBJ student conference or something, and they're like, oh yeah. I'm like, dude, no, like people care more sometimes about the St. Ed's and Ignatius and their alma maters. And it's, I want her to know everybody's got a Browns podcast and nobody's listening to it.
Yeah. I think, and to Jimmy's point and to what you guys talked about as well, you guys, now that you guys have essentially established yourself on the Cleveland State front, and you guys see the value of the coverage, and also see the value of covering it not once every 2 weeks, because every 2 weeks is absolutely, what's true now isn't going to be true 2 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have from your sites, your collective sites, you guys benefit from the flexibility. I do also want to mention the fact that the Cauldron did not used to be at once every 2 weeks. That is a recent development, and I don't know who thought that one up.
It used to be
that is dumb as
weekly
hell.
before.
Twice
it was weekly
a week.
when I first started. I think when Matt first started, it was weekly. It was one print edition and one online edition. If you go back in the archives, it
Twice
used
a
to be
week.
every 3 days.
It used to be twice a week, because that's when I was sports editor there 20, God knows how long years ago. It was twice a week, so we had to So we were the one, So at that point in time, it made perfect sense to be able to do what we can do. And this is, now mind you, of course, this was twice a week at a time before. God, more old jokes coming before the internet got really, really popular. So anyway, but again, the big thing was you had a situation where you could focus on the cover. You could focus on the coverage and focus on the game stories. Do things like, for example, your local paper was doing on the high school front. Whereas, now if you go to a Cauldron, if you're only doing it once every 2 weeks, if you're only publishing once every 2 weeks, exactly what is the point of writing a game story? You should be spending a lot. The focus should be more on probably feature stories or something like that.
It has to be, because I'm on the Cleveland Stater now, which publishes every 3 weeks. And so if you're writing a sports article, you either got to really plan it to happen before deadline, or you're doing a recap of multiple games. And even for them, from the time it prints, the final day when you send out the paper is a week after your deadline. So you're really kind of handicapped in that sense, because there is no urgency. There is no newsworthiness.
You would have to go straight to just feature writing. That would really be the only thing you could do in a biweekly paper. You wouldn't be able to do recaps, because nobody's going to read a recap on a game that happened a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, it has to be.
There are newspapers who do it. The Scene, I think, does a good job of that. CGN, is, I believe, still a weekly paper, and they do a good job of getting out good coverage, but they still have the online front to get.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the other part that I'm a little mystified by, is the fact that you guys figured out that, hey, we have this online platform, we can use it, but clearly others haven't. And I'm a little I'm kind of mystified by that. Especially if you are putting together a paper, if you are putting together I don't really understand the logic behind that.
What I will say is that I made my bones and learned most of what I knew from the Cauldron. I started doing the Cauldron before I became a writer, so I'll always be grateful to them for learning everything. But it's a lot of that's external forces. A lot of that is outside funding. You don't really have the funding to print 1,000 or 500 papers every couple of days anymore. A lot of that is what, we talked about reliability of writers. Well, you also have to have a reliability of your web editor. Our web editor never posted any of our stories, and that site doesn't exist anymore. And I guess the new web editor also left, who was supposed to design a new site. And it's not all bad. It's just, sometimes it's just what it is. That's what you have, and you got to make the best of what you have. We were just lucky enough that you can get a WordPress site. It's cheaper than ever to go start your own site now. Hosting is cheap. You can design your own site. So it's really just adapting to like, hey, it's really cheap to do this now. We just have to rethink it.
Yeah, and Sean and I, like I mentioned earlier, we had to make a decision, with our future in mind. And it didn't make sense for us to continue to tread water with the Cauldron. And like Sean said, I'm forever grateful for everything I learned there. And, I've evolved so much as a writer and an editor there. But what we've been able to do over the past almost year now with the Reserve, and in my mind, I think we've pretty much become the epicenter of Cleveland State sports coverage and really building a sense of, responsibility and being relied upon by people on social media and stuff like that to deliver that news. People, it's gotten to the point now where people tweet at us and ask us questions about what's going on, and we can go and we can figure that stuff out for people. Whereas in the past with the Cauldron, we weren't able to do that. So for Sean and I think we've been able to really further evolve in our young careers as a journalist. And I think, at the end of the day, that business decision for us, even though we might not be getting as many eyes on our material right now as we were with the Cauldron, at the end of the day, it really has paid off for all of those other reasons that a lot of people really don't think about.
Mm-hmm. And when you run your own website and you can see the view numbers and you can see your ad sales and all that, you have a chance to fail, and failing's your biggest asset. We've tried to cover different sports around CSU, and we've tried to maybe cover some other things. And then when it gets 15 views 3 times in a row, you say, okay, it's not only about the quality of writing anymore. You have to now think about the business of journalism. What do people want to read? What is there a market for? And we're constantly, saying, okay, maybe this isn't worth the time anymore. Maybe this specific article or this specific thing we're doing just isn't going to work out well because, it's great content and maybe we enjoy doing it, but sometimes, and when we enjoy doing it, we keep doing it. But sometimes if it's a lot of driving time and it's a lot of time spent covering it and it's not a pleasant experience to do, and then you're obviously not putting out something that somebody wants to read, that teaches you something. That teaches you about, okay, I need to think in a different way, because regardless of good writing, wherever you go, your job is to share information with people. So if people aren't reading that or getting your information, and you're not doing your job, it's not necessarily view chasing as much as it is chasing what people are interested in.
And Sean and I are pretty much, and everybody with us, we're learning the business side of journalism as much as we're learning the written side. And I guess the best way to put it is we're kind of walking on broken ankles right now, where, we're kind of stumbling, we're swaying. We don't really know exactly where to, put our coverage at, where should we put our efforts at? And it's just constantly a learning experience. And some things we're hitting on. I mean, Cleveland State sports have been a major hit, but like Sean said, there have been a couple of things that we have covered that have been complete misses. And, it's all part of the learning experience. And I think, what Sean and I have learned over the past 9-10 months now, it's been so valuable. And I'm certainly glad that we decided to go this route rather than stick with the safe route and collect our scholarship and stay another year, 2 years, whatever, with the Cauldron.
And on a comic side note, Matt and I are also literally walking at broken ankles because it's what we complain about every day after the wreck.
Sean and I are very clumsy people.
We are every day. It's like my legs hurt. I need new ones. Where do I go get new legs?
All right. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about today, I think we'll give Detroit Mercy a break this week because nothing's going on that front as far as I know, and well, I'm sure we could talk about it next week too. I'm not sure where. I'm not honestly sure where they're at, but what I do know is the one thing I did want to talk about today is, and it's something that has been going on, for a while now, and ironically, for years Cleveland State was the poster child for this, but. I wanted to talk a little bit about the transfers. You have, it used to be endemic to it used to be just one school and it happened and it was bad luck and whatever. Now you see it kind of all over the place. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, you've had Everett Winchester over at Wright State has announced that he's transferring, and so I guess the question is, at this point in time, because you have so many of them, if you go on verbal commits right now, there's hundreds and hundreds of different people, players who are looking to transfer in and out. Some of them have immediate eligibility. Some of them are going to have to sit out a year. And that's not even counting some of the any of the junior college transfers. So in terms of the HoriZone League as a whole, and we talked about this with Jack Talley from Valhalla Vanguard last week about the benefits of getting those transfers in. Like they're looking at the Alabama transfer Amar Davis coming in, and so you have a question where what does it look like in terms of what are the benefits at this point in time? It used to be mid-majors lost their. Could you guys? Yes. I was holding off on this. That's my younger dog Harry who won't shut up. So congratulations, Harry. You're on the podcast now. Congratulations. So in terms of is the transfer issue a dread even within the HoriZone League anymore? Because as much as you see the outflow coming in, you also see the opportunity for people coming in, and you've always have. It's just probably a little bit more prominent now.
The Youngstown State's kind of on fire right now because everybody seems to be running away from it. They've had like the majority of their team either graduate or transfer at this point.
I think that there's of course the possibility that Calhoun just says, hey, you know what, I want to use your scholarship. You're no longer welcome. maybe a nicer way of putting it, but it could be. I think
Youngstown State is kind of a unique situation because all of the and correct me if I'm wrong, Jimmy. I know we've talked about this a couple of times over the last few weeks, where in their situation, all of the people who are transferring out are some of the old Jerry Slocum holdovers. And
yeah, I mean, it looks like he's just kind of. It looked to me like he's blowing it up, and that's where he's trying to, keep it up. So I'm fine with that.
It's just kind of funny when you're looking at, because I did a article on all the transfers that are leaving. Eventually, I'll update that when they all find somewhere else or whoever comes in. But you're looking at right now 7 of them, one of them who left in December. And when you think about Jared Calhoun, I'm not sure how much of a candidate he was, but he was almost a candidate at Cleveland State. So, I mean, that easily could have been over where we are, getting rid of everybody.
Well, the difference between, as you guys know, the difference between Cleveland State and Youngstown State is Cleveland State had 6 seniors that were graduating anyway. Yeah. So within 2 years, they were only going to have a handful of Gary Waters holdovers anyway. Now they only have 1. They have Cash Thomas.
Gary Waters scared away his players for Pelton.
Well, yeah. So there's that too. Yeah. So and then. In this for the Youngstown State situation where you see Jared Calhoun and kind of a blow it up and start over again type of situation, then you just have now I really have to talk about Detroit because it's just a matter of everybody leaving, and
they don't have a coach yet,
and that has a lot to do with it. It absolutely does. But then they put themselves behind the 8 ball by fumbling around waiting to, get a coach in. And then, and again, as of this week, there's still no news on that front.
It can be quite damaging to not have a head coach, especially during the signing period.
Absolutely.
If you don't have a coach during the signing period, you're kind of screwed.
and they absolutely are. I mean, as bad as Detroit Mercy was, I can't even imagine, as bad as Detroit Mercy was last year, I can't even imagine what we have to look forward to next year. And this in a league that, by and large, should be better than what it was last year. Although, should be better than it was last year. And, to have that situation at Detroit Mercy still kind of lingering over the league as a whole, that hurts. And I think we lost Jimmy.
No.
So,
Oh.
Great.
I mean, I don't know how you can, if you're going to get rid of a coach, you've got to know who you're going to bring in, right? You've got to have an idea.
Well, I thought for sure, I mean, honestly, you still have Jermaine Jackson, who's still there, and all signs should have pointed to Jermaine Jackson getting that job, whether it was a good idea or not. Obviously it wasn't, it was logic. But now, I mean, fast forward so many weeks later, they're still not making that decision. And so it's just one of those things that and maybe it's because of the fact that it's just, and I keep harping on, the Detroit Mercy situation, but let's face it, they're really the only team that doesn't have a coach in place, doesn't have a real direction. Well, and I mean, looking at it,
they're going through transition, just like a lot of us have gone through lately. So it's because Bakari Alexander, they thought he was the guy. He was an alum who had the pedigree. He was a guy who was a good recruiter. He was familiar with the area. He was, somebody that would get Detroit Mercy fans excited. And it didn't work out. Obviously it was a little bit of a special case, but it didn't work out. So now you're back to the drawing board. And that's, it's okay. Like, they'll figure their stuff out. Detroit will figure their stuff out, or they'll just be the new Youngstown State. And whatever happens, it's all on the hiring. They keep hiring. But you get a problem with them waiting. Their next couple of years were going to be trash anyways. So it stinks not having somebody during the spring signing period. But when if they hired a coach right before the spring signing period, that guy would be spending a lot of his first few weeks on the job recruiting his own players to stay anyways. So
which is exactly what happened when Dennis Felton came in last season. And probably more to the point, also maybe not so much on the Jared Calhoun front, but that he had to have that. Probably had to have that conversation as well.
Yeah. As far as like the transfers go, it's the new normal. This is how college basketball is now. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think that it's right that we really stop adults from being able to change teams or change schools. You say you can't go to school here, you can't go to school there.
Yeah.
The thing that just bothers me even more so than that is obviously that we're not paying these kids that make schools money. So there's a real. It's just it seems like a lot of I don't want to call it indentured servitude or something, but it's kind of nuts. Like, if we're not going to be paying these kids, at least let them be able to transfer when a coach leaves and not have to sit out a year.
Who may have a solution.
It seems like the NCAA is starting to get there.
Getting there, slowly but surely. I mean, you've only been talking about that part for a year now. I think they're closer now to that than they were before. But the one other thing I wanted to talk about, I'm glad you brought up I'm glad you brought up the paying of athletes thing, because I want to talk about and I never thought I'd actually say this on a HoriZone Roundtable podcast ever, but I want to talk about Lavar Ball. Yeah. Specifically this junior basketball association that he has decided that the, as I keep calling him, the Kris Jenner of basketball has brought to the fore.
Okay. I don't watch the Kardashians, so I don't get your reference all that well.
Kris Jenner is the matriarch of the Kardashian family. And also, I apologize to everybody for bringing up Kardashians on any podcast or anywhere ever, but that's the best comparison. Basically, she's the matriarch. She's basically the one that pretty much makes everything happen, from their stupid show on E to all their other, from all their other projects on the planet. Look at me. Lavar Ball, basically same concept, except he's got sons who actually have talent. So his next kind of project has been this Junior Basketball Association, where, which is, if I understand it correctly, is catering to basket players that want to jump from high school and play professionally in the United States. And not just that, and we also talked before we started the podcast about how the G League has now, the NBA's developmental league has now started with having players who are 18 years old, which is a year younger than the NBA minimum. So with those two kind of developments happening, where does that kind of, what does that mean in terms of, say, a HoriZone League that is that of which a lot of the talented mid-majors, the potential talented mid-major players could potentially look at that as an option, as opposed to saying to go to a mid-major like a HoriZone League school?
I would imagine that if you're going to a mid-major and you're probably not highly anticipating going to the NBA, I would imagine that the college education will work out better for you financially than the junior basketball league or the G League would. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but for a lot of these kids who are going to mid-majors, they're not entering the draft early. They're not guys who are going just to play.
Honestly, I think that the G League is the real route, the real way to change things for the better. There has to be a point. They have to figure out in the next CBA how to make it so that the elite players who really shouldn't be going to college because they're putting they're leaving millions of dollars on the table so that they can satisfy the NBA's one and done rule. These kids, they have to figure out a way in the CBA to get these guys to be able to stash them at the G League for a year or two, and also be able to pay them. So there's some difficulty in that, but that's the future. Guys like Coach Calipari, that's the thing that they may dread, because that'll be the thing that will take their players. Now for the HoriZone League, I do think there are some players. I think a guy like a Dikembe Dixon probably would be more inclined to go to something like that. Valpo had Sam Hanpa not that long, like 10 years ago or so. He dipped out early so that he could start playing professionally. The other players may benefit from playing at playing at that level a little more, but really what I see, if I'm looking at like how the HoriZone League shakes out with this, I don't think it's going to affect the players a whole lot. I certainly don't think the Lavar Ball League is going anywhere. I think the Lavar Ball League is an idea that popped in his head, and because he has no filter whatsoever, he just tweeted it out and started playing it out. I think Lavar Ball is a guy who, a lot of us see him for the blowhard that he is, but I also think that he genuinely wants to help, like, kids. Like he wants to like help these kids who live in like inner cities that may need to have that kind of income. I think he genuinely wants that, but I don't see anybody investing in it. I don't even think Lonzo is investing a ton of money into that thing, because what just to get this right. First off, to get real investors, you have to be able to make money. There has to be a profit here. And I don't see people buying in to a third level basketball league. Well, really fourth level, because this thing's going to be it'll be on the same level talent wise as the NCAA if it were ever to come across. And when I say NCAA, I mean more like our level NCAA, not like high majors, because there will be some kids that'll play at that level, but when I play there. But I think that the kids that would really have like NBA aspirations and don't want to play in the aren't going to the G League, they're still going to go to school. So they're still going to go to school because that's going to be the best way to get the exposure. I don't see exposure being part of it. I don't see anybody investing in it. I think that you have, no matter how many teams you have, if you have 8 teams, that's still 8 coaching staffs, 8 training staffs, 8 team owners, 8 full rosters. I mean, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars of investment that needs.
No, I get it. So
They don't have the ability. LeVar Ball is a big talker, and
Sure.
he's a guy who's got a lot of big ideas, and he wants to do a lot of cool things. It's good for him, and for his kids' sake, hopefully he does all right, and maybe if he can find a niche. But I also know that the CBA and the ABA still exist, but nobody's buying tickets to their games because there's no. They really exist to be like the last bastion of quote unquote professional basketball for people who just don't want to give up the game anymore. People who aren't ready to give up the game, that's their spot. And I see LeVar Ball's league being something more like that.
Well, for LeVar
Frankly.
Ball's for LeVar Ball's league to be successful and for it to attract the talent that it would need to begin to generate a profit and really be sustainable, it is going to have to pass up the NCAA as on the level of being a route to the NBA. It's going to have to be a greater opportunity for players to make it to the NBA than the NCAA is. As much as the mindset of the generation of the Sean and I's is changing, people still have the long term in mind more than the short term. And if LeVar Ball's league is going to pay the players, it might be a better short term option for these players. But in the long term, if LeVar Ball's league is not showing that it has better potential to land somebody in the NBA that the NCAA has, it's not going to be successful, and it's not going to convince somebody to go play for one of the, say 8 teams in LeVar Ball's league rather than Kentucky or Villanova or, Cleveland State or whoever. I think if it is going to be successful, it's going to take so long to get there that I don't know that it would have the ability to last long enough to get to that point.
I think a big thing that he would have to think about, and I don't know what time of year he's thinking of playing, but a lot of the off-brand football leagues, let's call them, will play in the spring, or they'll play when football isn't going on. I mean, you could probably make a successful business out of that. I mean, minor league makes enough money to stay around. A lot of these football teams, these smaller ones, and a lot of smaller leagues are around. I don't think it's going to become, big baller or anything like that, to steal his term, but I don't think it's going to upset the NCAA. He might be able to keep the league going, but I don't think he's going to pull away anybody who's really going. I mean, I am seeing my Twitter now the same way you'll see people will retweet when their friends get, commit to a college. One of the CSU recruits today was retweeting somebody who went to Lavar's league. So I mean, there are players who are interested. I don't know how long he can keep the league going, but there's players who are interested.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he wants his league to be an alternative to the NCAA, I mean, the NCAA is an empire, and it has an absolute monopoly on amateur sports, right? So he's not only going to have to try to make his own league successful, he's going to have to try to cut into a monopoly. And it would take a ton of work and a lot of luck for him to even be able to compete, at least in my opinion.
I think he'd have to play during the summer when NBA and college aren't playing, and I think the business model would have to be promoting his shoe company rather than trying to sell tickets to the games, if that makes sense to me. I don't know what you guys would think about it, but I think that's the only way he sustains it financially.
All right. Well, I guess with that, I believe we are going to close out this episode. Sean, Matt, it was outstanding having you guys on. Jesse, you as well.
Yeah, Bob, thank you so
Thanks
much
for having us.
If you ever, want us on again, just shoot us a message and we'll be happy.
You bet. All right. And of course, and gentlemen, where can they find your collective sites?
So on Twitter, follow us at the Reserve Media, and Facebook, I believe we're also under the Reserve Media, and then reservenews.com.
Yeah, and for me, I'm mainly just on Twitter now. Twitter is catch_n_shoot.
All right. And as for us, the HoriZone Roundtable is as it has been since this second run on sportshacks.com. HAX.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Lavar Big Baller. That's LAVAR Big Baller.
Make sure to buy his $600 shoes while you're there.
We're
No,
stay in your lane. That's all I gotta say to that. Stay in your lane.
I'm gonna listen back to this and I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? I've injected a Lavar ball where it doesn't belong. As always, HoriZone Roundtables on sportshacks.com and wherever you can find podcasts. And tune in next week for another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. Take care.